always for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 319. We're talking walk-in effects on mental health, Workplaces Worth Working, episode number 7. And this has been part of our series around Mental Health Awareness Month, the month of May. And so this is an interesting episode because at first, when you think about the walk-in in a restaurant, we think about a couple things. When I think about it, I think about the picture on the outside of it of Christopher Walken. I think of the meme or the GIF of John Travolta in Pulp Fiction looking around because you always lose things in the walk-in. The walk-in has become this interesting place where it's somewhat sacred, and it's also kind of the butt of a lot of jokes within the restaurant. Always walking in there, forgetting what you went to go grab. Who can get the most meat into the bus tub so they only have to take one trip out of the walk-in. So there's a lot of dynamics that play in the walk-in. And I myself have spent time in the walk-in trying to decompress, trying to take a deep breath, losing my shit, not in front of the rest of the team, spending time, Zen moments, consolidating or doing inventory. So the walk-in has always been this unique place. And I think as we started to navigate into talking about mental health, I realized through our guests today and many others that there's actually a thoughtful and practical way that we can utilize the walk-in to support mental health. So that's what we're going to talk about a little bit today. We're going to talk to Erin Boyle from CHOW, Culinary Hospitality Outreach and Wellness, as well as Hassel Aviles from Not 9 to 5 Org to kind of dissect this a little bit. And we're going to be talking about the walk-in all week. So check out all of our content from Clubhouse to articles on bestservedpodcast.com. We're going to have stuff coming out on Instagram, takeovers, all about the walk-in. It's a safe space sometimes. It's a volatile space sometimes. So, all right, I'm rambling, and you know I love to do that. Erin, I want to bring Erin in first to touch on this. So, Erin, hello, good to see you.
Howdy.
So the walk-in, like we know, you being a chef, it's a mystical and strange place in there for sure. But it was not until recently that I realized that there was an impact that it had on my mental health, that it can and does have across the industry. So connect the dots a little bit. I don't think people automatically associate the walk-in with a place where you might break down mentally or be supported in mental health. So connect those dots a little bit for us.
I mean, for sure, I feel the same way. I didn't connect those dots when I was working in a restaurant. It wasn't until I was trying to figure out how to get the attention of folks in the restaurant industry to talk to them about CHOW that I was like, what is this thing? What is the thing that connects us? What do we all have in common? And, there's a number of them, but the walk-in is the place where emotions happen, whether they're good or bad. It's, at least for me, it was where I would take people to talk about things that went wrong over the night. So I was probably creating I thought I was doing everybody a favor by pulling them aside, but I was probably creating a lot of drama because if you get pulled into the walk-in by chef, things aren't, she's not pulling you in for a happy, fun, how was your vacation conversation. So I was probably creating situations of stress and distress. And it's also the place where I would go. And again, this is completely unknowing. It's the place that as soon as I stepped into it, it was like, so when you talk about forgetting things, I think that might be it. Even if I'm in a hurry, right? I got to get the snap peas. I walk in and I'm like
this is nice.
Everything just, right? Like all, you're in air conditioning, you're a little bit comfortable, and you can just not be on for 10 seconds, 10 minutes, whatever it takes.
Okay. Yeah. I see it. There's so much happening in the walk-in that maybe we took for granted that we didn't realize the impact it was having, positive and, to your point, negative, and thinking about that space. So I appreciate that. And I want to dig in a little bit more on the chef side of it, kind of your personal experience with the walk-in. I want to bring Hassel in to join the conversation. Hassel, good to see you as always. All right. So for you, we joked about this beforehand. We got a couple back of house, and for you, the front of house. And so similar but different in kind of the experience of utilizing the spaces. The walk-in a lot of times, because we're territorial in the kitchen, sometimes you might have been shunned from the walk-in. So give us the front of house perspective, because I think a lot more we joke about and kind of have these tropes around what happens to walk-in, but so often they're from the chef or cook perspective. So give us on the front of house perspective. And you're muted. Yeah.
I muted myself so that I wasn't interrupting, but now I can't talk. Yeah, so I totally agree with that. I was kicked out of the walk-in many times. I also would accidentally go into the walk-in and see, people having emotional experiences in the walk-in and be like,
oh, that's awkward.
Not going in right now. Or have, witnessed other kinds of emotional outbursts like yelling or throwing something, like Erin said, I think it was such a good description that there's a lot of emotional experiences that happen in the walk-in, and whether that's a positive emotional experience, or like that kind of relief exhale, like, whoo, like a moment, or it's a negative emotional experience where you're like screaming or crying or yelling or just, trying to escape that moment of intensity. Because as we know, like restaurants, bars, hotels, wherever you work, that there was a walk-in, the intensity, it's the go, go, go. It's the nonstop. There's not even legal breaks, let alone like above legal breaks. You know what I mean? And so oftentimes, sometimes I think it was premeditated, where in my mind I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to the walk-in. I'm going to go get extra linens, when really it was just like, I just need a minute. I just need a break to like not be yelled at or talked to by 500 people. Because, front of house, you're just like constantly emotional labor. So I think
so much input,
so much input and so much output too. Like have a nice day, like service with a smile all the time. And, if you're having an emotional moment, no one cares. You still have to do service with a smile. And so, I think for me, there was the walk-in, there was the, what we talked about earlier, the pantry, closet, or where you get the linens from, or the washroom. I wasn't really that much of a smoker. So for some people, it's the smoke breaks.
Right.
For me, it was more of, I'm going to the washroom. I didn't have to go to the washroom. I cried in the washroom a lot. So, I think for front of house and back of house, I think for all employees with this experience of the intense high pressure and the go, 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 I think all of us seeked comfort in somewhere like the walk-in to just take a breath or feel an emotion, because this whole idea of check your emotions at the door that we were told is just not a real thing. Yeah.
And when you were talking about that, the smile, it's we've talked about on the show a lot, like leave your shit at the door, smile, wear a uniform, is stuff that we perpetuate that basically says you're not allowed to have an off day, let alone a bad day, because we are so focused on the guest experience. And look, the guest experience obviously is a driver for the business. Yet if the individuals are not in an emotional state to deliver on that promise of hospitality, then what's the point? And so the fact that we have to self-regulate to that degree to go and hide somewhere to show any emotion is a struggle. And I think exacerbated for front of house, because us fragile cooks are so territorial that it's my walk-in, that get off my walk-in, stuff like that. So you have less places to potentially be able to have that emotional response. And then the hothead chef, for some reason, we're allowed to scream in the kitchen, and it's like a good show, even for the guests. But the server bartender, never, cannot happen.
You can't get away with it. And like you said, I think one thing I want to highlight is that it's not even that you're not even asking people to not have an emotional experience, is that you're actually asking them to not be human. It is human.
How so? Yeah.
Because it is human to have emotions. There is no human on the planet that does not have an emotion, right? And to deprive and repress and suppress emotions is actually where the problems begin. So by asking people to not feel their emotions, to not express their emotions, right? So there's the feeling and then there's the expression.
Right.
So whether that's I feel joy and I'm laughing and I'm smiling, or I feel sadness and I'm crying and I'm sad, or I feel angry and I'm screaming and breaking things, or, whatever I'm doing in an anger outburst, it is just not absolutely under any circumstance reasonable to ask people to not be human. And listen, are there places to express that emotion? Of course. Yep. But that's the thing. If we don't even allow for places, humans are going to find places. And so as front of house and back of house people, where did we usually end up? The walk-in. Because we weren't given somewhere to go.
I think also what you're talking about a little bit is bottling some of that up. We don't create the space for the small emotional expressions so that they bottle, and then they explode wherever they explode. because they always come out. They have to. Like, they have to come out some way, somewhere. And so the walk-in was often that. The walk-in also for me was that because it's a little bit soundproof. So you know, screaming in the walk-in is a little less seemingly scary and intense for other people who are like, if you're doing that on the line, which of course I've done as well, it's like, oh, wow, no eye contact, awkwardness. And it's hard to recover from that level of awkwardness. So, Erin, why are we so territorial? What is the deal with chefs? Why do we have to own all the real estate? What's going on there? Answer for all chefs and cooks.
For all, yeah. So speaking on behalf of all chefs, I mean, there's so much work and care that goes into what we're trying to do and the experience we're trying to create. So that if you take so much as a beat from my mise en place, that was my beat. I was working on that. And there's so little time. So again, if you take something off of my area that I'm planning on, then I have to use my time to go get it. And when we were talking earlier, I immediately said, keep your hands off my limes, because I'm picturing folks from the front of the house, the bartender running into the walk-in and being like, no, that's going to go on my food costs, not on the beverage cost. And that's not okay. Mm-hmm. And looking back, you know, if we're all going to play on the same team, we just got to go, okay, obviously we can't have margaritas without limes. Go get the limes you need. But that's in the moment, when you have no tools for communication, because you don't get promoted to chef by being the best person for the job. You're usually the person that's been there the longest.
Attrition.
Or
really the last person standing.
Yes.
It's true.
So there's nobody that came and said, hey, this is how we're going to do this. This is how we should run things. And also maybe you guys should work together and talk about plans and how you're going to create the team. Like we didn't feel like we had time for that.
Understood. And the walk-in, you know, the walk-in's interesting too. When you walk in the walk-in, and Estelle mentioned it.
Can you get out of here? I'm so sorry. I was talking to my daughter.
You're good. When you walk in the walk-in, there's like this, what are you doing in here? To everybody. It's always like, what are you doing in here? And then they're like, oh, I forgot what I was going to grab. And there's like that whole dynamic there. You know, just like your daughter is like, what are you doing in here?
Like right now.
Are you supposed to be on the line? Are you supposed to be behind the bar? Why are you in the walk-in right now? And then you have to come up with an excuse, because it can't be that I need a moment. It can't be that like it's hitting me right now. It can't be that, you know what, every day before service, I take 3 minutes in the walk-in just to take a deep breath. We have to make up some excuse. And I was looking for the limes. Wait, you're trying to steal my limes? And it's this vicious cycle of not actually saying what we're really feeling, not actually saying what's happening. We're just saying the thing that's safe enough to keep us, I don't know, out of the target of somebody judging you. Maybe
I love what you're saying, though. Sorry, go ahead, Erin.
No, I mean, when Hassel mentioned that she went to the washroom, it was the walk-in was sacred space, but the bathroom, that was like, yeah, nobody's gonna walk in on me. People aren't going to look for me for like 10 or 15 minutes, right? And you can just, and I'm like, it's programmed into me so deep that I haven't worked in a restaurant in 9 years. And I still, when I go into the bathroom, have this sense of like, okay, now I can totally be 100% me and just like check in and see what's going on and make a mental prep list. And I'm like, I don't know how to get out of that system in my head. And I don't know that I ever will, right? Just because you're conditioned to find these safe spots. And unlike you guys, I had no idea that I was doing it. I just would find little pockets in the day that felt safe.
Yeah, it was an unconscious moment quite often. It was just, sometimes it felt like it was survival. Like your body was just taking you to the place where it knew it could do what it needed to do, even if your mind wasn't allowing it, because you're caught in that conditioning. So I appreciate that. Estelle, you had something to say. Jump back in.
Oh, all I was going to say is that I love what you were saying about that part of the problem was the lack of acknowledgement, that we were all like pretending to not feel, pretending to not, emote. But really what that reminds me of is like, I always say to people are like, I don't know where to start, with mental health conversations in my team. I don't know what to do. And, all of this has a major impact on your mental health, obviously, people being repressed and suppressed of their emotions and not being allowed to express. And I always say the number one first thing to do is to acknowledge that we all have mental health, to acknowledge that we all have emotional health, to acknowledge that we all feel emotions, to acknowledge that vulnerability is a strength. Like, as soon as you start verbally out loud saying these things, especially if you're a leader, if you're a chef, if you're an owner operator, if you're a manager, whoever has influence over the team, as soon as you start saying these things, it kind of lets people go, okay, I work in this kind of place where we're actually talking about these things. Like, exhale. Okay, I can be a human. Okay, if I cry, that doesn't mean I'm weak. Or, if I'm sad or if I'm struggling with anxiety, I can actually tell my chef, like, I'm having, a really bad day with my anxiety. And it allows people to actually exhale and breathe and be more themselves. And in the end, also, like, all these things will create a stronger team, higher employee retention, like all these things that we always talk about for the business case of this topic.
And the math starts to be valuable.
The math adds up. Because if you don't, what happens is you have more breakdowns. And sometimes, because I can't talk about it, because I work in a place where you haven't allowed me to even feel an emotion, let alone express an emotion, I just quit. I just leave you high and dry. I just never come back. And, then you're talking about the cost of turnover and all that kind of stuff. So I just wanted to say that, like, we can't undervalue how important it is to acknowledge verbally and in the written word that all these things that I said earlier, like, that everyone has mental health, that, like, everyone's affected right now, right? We're still in a global trauma. We still have collective grief. We're still dealing with our industry, with a mass, like, so many people have left this industry in the last year.
Yeah.
Right. Labor shortage is the only thing I ever hear about these days from employers. These things are still happening. So if we're not acknowledging them, then unfortunately, my worry too is that we're just going to end up back in the walk-in dynamic.
I couldn't agree more. Acknowledgement, literally my favorite word. It's what we built all of this on. There's 3 places I want to go now, listening to kind of us navigating this for ourselves personally, especially. One is that interpersonal dynamic. I want to touch on that. I want to touch on the opportunity that the business has to create that space so we don't have to self-regulate as much, that it becomes normalized. I think is another interesting place. And then I want to talk about some specific techniques that we might apply to be able to take ourselves out of fight or flight, take ourselves out of that mindset where we're just scared or angry or whatever that is. So the first thing that's interesting is those safe spaces, the way that we have interacted with them, to Erin's point, and then to Sal's point, we haven't necessarily had a good relationship with them, because we took cooks in there and we screamed at them, and people knew that if they're going to walk in, they were probably getting chewed out, right? Or that, you had to go there and hide for just a couple of moments. I think of, like, the hazing that goes into it. People have been locked into walk-ins. We've sent people in to mop the freezer and chip ice off of it. People have gone in the restroom. You'd have to put your apron, in front of the door so that people couldn't put flour on the ground, and then CO2 blow flour into the bathroom. Like, all of this stuff that we do in restaurants to each other.
Cover your drink or hide it somewhere so people don't put fish sauce in it.
Liquid smoke or something in your coat. Like, these are the things we've done with this space. So it's time to do something different with these spaces. It's time for these spaces not to be an opportunity to haze somebody, an opportunity to support somebody so that they stick around, so that the business, let's talk about the business, cannot lose $6,000 every time they lose a line level employee, $14,000 for every single manager. If you have a restaurant that has 50 employees, you're talking about $250,000, right, that you are potentially losing. If you have 4 locations, it's $1 million your restaurant is losing on turnover costs alone. And we don't have money to pay a living wage. We don't have money for benefits. We don't have money to invest in mental health. On paper, to your point, we need to build it into the foundation of the business, not as a thing that happens when, oh shit, we need to fix something. We had an issue. We're going to get sued. And all of a sudden we start to think about something that should have been foundational in the business. let's talk about the opportunity that the business has to be able to address these issues. The two of you and anybody who follows knows workplaces worth working is what we're focused on so much with Best Served. We have to build it into the business model because it can't just be window dressing. And we see that play out a lot. So let's go there. Hassel, if you want to kick us off there, the business's opportunity and potential responsibility to build safe spaces, let's stay with safe spaces, into the business so that the walk-in becomes that safe space that we want it to be.
Sure, no problem. So for me, I think it always starts with psychological safety. You really need to understand, what does that mean and how do I foster it in my workplace? So
yeah, we're cooks, so explain it and
exactly.
All words for me, please.
I was going to say, so I'm not expecting you to know what that is because unfortunately in our industry, it rarely exists. Psychological safety is just when you have an environment where people feel safe to take risks, make mistakes, and be vulnerable with one another without any negative consequence to how you're perceived or your job. So if, again, I work for you and you're the chef and I'm a cook, or if I'm a bartender and you're the manager, whatever the dynamic is, that I feel comfortable enough telling you that anything that makes me feel vulnerable, so whether that's around my mental health or whether that's around some sort of other emotional reaction. Also, if I make a mistake, can we give and receive feedback safely, right? If I mess up, if I break something, if I did mess up the, limes in the walk-in, or if I did whatever.
No margaritas tonight.
Right? That you're not going to fire me, or you're not going to now not give me a promotion because I did that. Again, all of these things go back to being human. Human error is always going to happen. That is absolutely part of being alive. There's no way around not making mistakes, and to make mistakes and take risks in a safe way, in an environment where I know that my job is secure. I know that you don't think less of me because, again, I took a risk, or I made a mistake, or I was vulnerable with you. So I think the employer absolutely has a responsibility to provide psychological safety in the workplace. Yes, it is new to this industry. It's not new in other industries. It's existed for a long time in other industries. So our restaurant, hotels, bars, we all need to learn this term. We all need to learn how to foster it. A lot of it, unfortunately, does mean hard change away from the brigade system, away from the chain of command and hierarchy, right? It means that input can come from the bottom. What a concept, that we can actually ask entry-level employees, what do you think? And actually consider it as part of our decision-making process.
Restaurants could be the greatest meritocracy created in any industry ever. It has the opportunity because from top to bottom, you work together to accomplish a singular goal in a given shift, unlike any other industry. I mean, the CEO of a certain industry, whoever's running that business, and the bottom person on the totem pole, so to speak, are seldom going to be on one team to accomplish one single goal. In a restaurant, that's the actual reality of day to day. So exactly. A true meritocracy created in that, and we've seen a lot of businesses that take that approach in tech or financial and things like that do really well.
Absolutely. So actually, a lot of research has been done by Google in 2017 and 2018, where they tested hundreds of teams because they were on a mission to figure out, how do you create the perfect team? How do you create the most highest performing team? So for high performance, number one factor was psychological safety. So it's a business case again. If you want to have the most successful restaurant with the most highest performing chefs and cooks and teams and front of house, staff, then you have to have psychological safety, right? You have to have. She has to go to the walk-in for sure.
Time to go to the walk-in.
I'm so sorry. This is the reality of working at home with kids. But yes, I really truly believe that employers need to start understanding what that is and how to foster it. And yeah, the other example I wanted to give as well is chefs that I now have started to hear that do meditations together as teams with their cooks. And I think that is also something that sometimes employers miss, is like, yes, you can offer benefits and you can offer all these things, but the day-to-day practices that you can work into lineup, and the day-to-day check-ins with yourself. Like I know we've talked about Patrick Mulvaney's I Got Your Back program, like any way that you can build in checking in with each other. I think employers need to understand the importance of checking in. with ourselves and with each other.
I like it. I think line checks now, I'm all about finding the things we do really well and applying it and deploying it against things we don't. Line checks include 3 minutes in the walk-in. Everyone does a loop into the walk-in, takes 3 minutes in the walk-in, and just breathes a little bit.
I love
Erin,
that.
Let you piggyback potentially on what the business needs to do, and then I want to go into this breathing in. I know that's something big for you, taking a breath, breathing in the walk-in potentially. Anything else for you that you want to call out the opportunity for businesses to kind of build this into the base model, invest in it? Any thoughts there?
So I think the easiest thing to do, like Hassel said, and no cost, is the check-ins. And it doesn't have to be like individual, and it doesn't have to be like, Jensen, how are you doing? That would be great. But it could just be as simple as during lineup, whatever time the group is together, whether it's family meal, reminding what resources they have. Hey, if anybody's feeling like this, we've got posters. Remember that we've got the phone numbers. Because if you're not talking about it, it's still stigmatized, right? So it doesn't have to be this really touchy-feely, let's go out and have a serious talk. It can be as simple as, has everybody reviewed the resource board? The other thing is, and I know that Hassel has some connections with this in Canada, but an employee assistance program. We just found one here in Colorado. We're working with a group called Triad that is getting us really, really affordable rates. So I think it's less than $45 a person for the year to have them covered for individual clinical therapy, couples therapy, help with finance, legal aid, so that they've got, maybe you can't give them full benefits and it's something you're working towards, but employee assistance program is something that I think is tangible for just about everyone. And again, the group that we're working with is willing to do a co-op model. So the more restaurants we get on board, the less it is for everybody else. So working with companies like that are willing to break the mold, because the standard is, you get one of those when you're working at Google or another big company. Right. So it's really, really nice to know that it's not just us that's changing. It's the people who are supporting are also changing so that they can help.
Good. And as always, everybody, resources, comments, links, they'll be there for you. Google, that's a good one. I think it's good for us to learn from outside industry. Sometimes we circle the wagons a little too much and if you haven't lived it, you don't know it. And the reality is so many people have lived a human experience that is directly correlated. So sometimes we hold on to that a little too tight. I learn a lot from looking at outside industries and finding ways that we can apply it. And then my job is to translate to the people that it's actually going to be of service to. And Erin, we'll talk about that employee assistance a little bit more, because Andrew from our team is working on, again, those workplaces worth working. We're building the whole framework for the business so that from a policy, procedure, protocols, investment model, that it's there, that it's not, again, that window dressing. So I appreciate that. Let's take a couple minutes and talk about some opportunities. We touched on the check-in a little bit. We touched on the potential to meditate together. I'm a big fan of that now. I just count my breaths. Like, I just need to slow my mind down, and I just breathe and count to 10 with every breath. I have a meditation app that I do that. It's, counting to 10 just helps kind of decompress you, takes you out of that intensity mode that a lot of times I personally find myself in. What else can we be doing in the walk-in? Let's stick with the walk-in. The walk-in, the temperature. Erin, you mentioned it, and Laura Green from Healthy Pour talked about this, and it really struck me. You're talking about going into a space that's 25, 30, 35 degrees cooler than where you're probably working, and we can get pretty hot under the collar.
Maybe 70 degrees? Yeah.
I mean, it makes sense that to cool down literally and figuratively in the walk-in. So Erin, maybe pick that up and start there with the walk-in, a space. What can we be doing in there? And why is it an important potential space for us to think about, like, de-escalating ourselves or each other?
I mean, again, you are literally getting cooler. I read from some of Kat's Kinsman's interviews that there were people that would actually take their shoes off and like connect with that cold floor. And I've never done that, but in my mind, I'm picturing coming off the line. My feet are the size of watermelons. I'm just sweating bullets, and how amazing that would feel. So you get this instant physical relief from the pressure, but then you're also out of the line of sight, out of the line of command, where you can breathe. And it's something that if you had ever said to me when I was working in the line, why don't you go in the walk-in and breathe? I would have not said anything polite in return. Right. It's kind of like that. You can't tell someone to calm down. Nobody will ever calm down by being told to calm down. But I think that if we use this, again, during lineup, if we talk about this as a way to de-escalate, especially if you're having some conflict with someone that you're working around, or if you're just not in a head place where you can't think anymore, if we can talk about this, it's like, hey, I need to take 5, go in the walk-in, literally cool off and kind of process. And if you need to keep busy, you can organize, do the walk-in Jenga, and really feel in control of like what's going on around you.
I'm fascinated with the taking your shoes off. I could see that being very helpful and kind of gross at this. Kind of gross.
So, but like, my immediate thought was like, ew, but it would feel amazing.
it would totally feel amazing. Here's an interesting thing, and then Hassel, I'll come to you with that. Is it's almost like you need to create some very clear language where instead of telling somebody to calm down, and we've seen that play out, and then that only escalates. I've never seen somebody tell somebody else to calm down that hasn't escalated a situation, right? It's fake attempt at trying to de-escalate. You're actually amplifying that. So it'd be interesting if there was just simple language like walk-in 3, and it's 3 minutes in the walk-in, and you just say that to somebody, and they go, I know what to do. It's like a clear training to them. We can condition a different way where they just know, okay, I can take 3 minutes in the walk-in. That's what's going to be best for me, best for the team. I'm interested in stuff like that because that's a simple thing. It's like calling in an all day. You got 2 orders of halibut, you got 2 salmon, you got 2 this. Walk-in 3, go. I think that's it. Hassel, thoughts on some things we can do in the walk-in? I want to wrap here, but what else can we do in the walk-in practice that we could apply?
I have a less gross one, and if you didn't want to take your shoes off. So it's used for panic attacks and anxiety. So you just hold an ice cube. So anytime that you can you're basically trying to break the pattern, the thought pattern, right? You get stuck in these ruminating thoughts. You get stuck in this, like, a panic attack technically is you're having anxiety about anxiety, right? You're feeling anxious that you even have anxiety. So, and it's a response, right, to a perceived or genuine threat. Oftentimes it's not actually a real danger, but it feels like a perceived threat, right? They've scanned brains during an anxiety attack and also during a situation where your life is actually in danger. They look the same. Right. So you feel it just the same as if you're dying, just the same as if your life is in danger. And so you really need to kind of like snap that a bit. So holding an ice cube, some people will like rub ice cubes on their wrists, or, it's a way to like shock your system. Basically, what you're trying to do is get and tap into your nervous system. Your parasympathetic nervous system is where you rest and digest. Right. So I think anytime that you can also use practice mindfulness techniques as well works this way. So if you're in a kitchen, you need a minute, or walk-in 3, or whatever you want to call it. There's like ways that you can use breathing techniques where you can like breathe, like this, like following your finger along, or you can use your other senses. So you'll be like, okay, I'm going to name 5 things I can see, 4 things I can hear, 3 things I can smell, 2 things I can, you know what I mean? 2 things I can touch. And that starts to basically, it takes your mind off of that overwhelming emotional experience that you're having, or those overwhelming thoughts that you're having. So the ice cube is a great one. Anything that will basically, even if you go to the sink and you just run your wrists under really cold water, also has the same effect. Anywhere where, like Erin's saying, like you can just have that really nice, cool exhale. And but ideally,
it's a literal like reboot.
Yes, it is a literal reboot.
Brain and emotions for one moment, which I really appreciate. All right, I want to wrap there. we're talking a lot more about the walk-in dynamics. So like I said, make sure and tune into kind of everything. Let's also see if there's somewhere we can get some breathing techniques, some mindful techniques.
Sure.
The 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 is something I've done before. It's of this really beautiful forest with a brook, and I can always remember it. So I've done that for myself.
Nice.
I think there's some couple valuable things. I want to make sure, if you are going to grab that piece of ice, make sure it's not that really nice molded ice that the bar is using, just like you don't want to steal the limes from the kitchen. Let's have some respect. Make sure you grab the right ice when you're needing to keep yourself in the moment. ARSL, always a pleasure speaking with you, always inspired, always learn something. Thanks for talking walk-in dynamics.
Thanks, Jensen.
Thanks, Jensen.
So,
Bye, Erin.
Bye,
yeah.
Hassel.
All right, everybody. Great episode today. I like that. There was some seriousness. There was some learning involved. There was a little bit of jokes and banter. I think we need all of those things. This is a really challenging subject, mental health, really challenging for us because, as Hassel mentioned, it takes fundamental and critical change, and that's hard to do. So I appreciate this episode, and everybody, again, check into all of the content we have coming out this week around mental health and specifically around the walk-in. Again, this was Best Served Podcast 319 and the effects of the walk-in on mental health. I think it's a fascinating topic, and we should continue to kind of delve into that. Use those safe spaces. And if you're managing a business, creating those safe spaces and building it into the foundation of the business, we have to develop workplaces worth working. That's it. Appreciate you all. Hope all of you have a great day. And if you spend the walk-in 3 today, know that that is okay and that is a safe space. We've all been there. Cheers.